Detective Lisa Rodriguez had been planning this garage sale for 3 months. After 14 years working homicide cases and countless sleepless nights chasing down leads, she finally had a free weekend to tackle the mountain of stuff that had somehow accumulated in her 2-car garage. Her small house on Oakwood Street had become a storage unit for everything she never had time to deal with. The alarm went off at 6 in the morning, but Lisa was already awake. Old habits from years of early morning crime scenes made sleeping past sunrise nearly impossible. She rolled out of bed, threw on her oldest jeans and a faded Police Academy t-shirt, and headed straight for the garage with her first cup of coffee. The garage looked like a tornado had hit it. Boxes labeled kitchen stuff sat next to Christmas decorations from 2019. Her old college textbooks were stacked under a broken exercise bike she'd bought during a New Year's resolution phase that lasted exactly 2 weeks. In the corner, dusty photo albums shared space with power tools she'd inherited from her father but never learned to use. Lisa had printed out the city's garage sale guidelines 2 weeks ago. Being a cop meant she knew exactly what permits she needed and what rules to follow. She'd filled out the paperwork, paid the $15 fee, and even called the non-emergency line to double-check the approved hours. Everything had to be by the book. She started by dragging 4 folding tables from her basement. The first table got all the kitchen items she'd collected over the years. There were 3 coffee makers because somehow she kept buying new ones instead of fixing the old ones. A bread maker still in its box sat next to a collection of mismatched coffee mugs from various police conferences and training seminars. The second table was for books. Lisa had always been a reader, especially during long stakeouts. Mystery novels, true crime books, and a surprising collection of romance novels that she'd picked up during particularly stressful cases. Reading about other people's happy endings helped her sleep after seeing too much of life's darker side. Table 3 got the random household stuff. Picture frames, candles, decorative bowls that someone had given her as housewarming gifts. There was a lamp shaped like a lighthouse that her sister had insisted would brighten up the place. Lisa had never had the heart to tell her it was hideous. The last table was for electronics and miscellaneous items. An old DVD player, computer speakers, phone chargers for phones she no longer owned, and a collection of shot glasses from cities she'd visited for police training conferences. By 7:30, everything was organized and priced. Lisa had learned from her neighbor's garage sale last year to price things low. She wasn't trying to make a fortune, just clear out space and maybe make enough money for a nice dinner out. The first customers arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. An elderly couple in a pristine Honda Civic pulled up, and the woman immediately gravitated toward the books. "Oh my goodness, you have the entire Detective Morrison series," she exclaimed. "I've been looking for these everywhere," Lisa smiled. "Take them all for $10. I read them during slow nights at work." The woman's husband was examining the power tools. "These look brand new. You don't use them much?" "My dad left them to me," Lisa explained. "I keep meaning to learn, but work keeps me pretty busy." "What do you do for work?" the woman asked while counting out money for the books. "I'm in law enforcement," Lisa said, which was her standard answer. Most people didn't need to know she spent her days investigating murders and armed robberies. Over the next hour, a steady stream of neighbors and bargain hunters stopped by. A young mother bought the exercise bike for her teenage daughter. A college student loaded up on the kitchen items, excited about setting up his first apartment. 2 kids spent 20 minutes deciding between different board games before their mom let them pick 3 for $5. Lisa found herself actually enjoying the interactions. During her regular workday, most conversations were about evidence, witness statements, or court testimony. It was refreshing to chat about normal things like recipe books and whether the coffee maker came with a warranty. Around 10 o'clock, a white SUV drove slowly past her house. Lisa noticed it because the driver was going unusually slow, almost crawling along the street. From her years of training, she automatically noted the license plate and the fact that the driver appeared to be taking pictures. The SUV made another pass 15 minutes later. This time, Lisa could see the driver more clearly through her front window. It was a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing what looked like expensive workout clothes. She had her phone out and was definitely photographing the garage sale. Lisa's cop instincts kicked in. In her neighborhood, people didn't usually conduct surveillance unless they were up to something. She made a mental note to keep an eye on the SUV while continuing to help customers. A family with 3 kids showed up and caused a delightful chaos around the toy section Lisa had set up. The parents were trying to negotiate with their children about how many items they could choose, while Lisa watched the interaction with amusement. The youngest, maybe 5 years old, had fallen in love with a stuffed elephant that had been sitting in Lisa's closet since her college days. "How much for the elephant?" the mom asked. "For him? Free," Lisa said, watching the little boy's face light up. "He's been waiting for the right person to take him home." The white SUV appeared again, this time parking across the street. The woman got out, and Lisa could see she was holding a clipboard along with her phone. She was wearing a visor and had the purposeful stride of someone on a mission. Lisa continued helping customers while keeping the woman in her peripheral vision. Years of surveillance work had taught her how to observe without appearing to watch. The woman was walking along the sidewalk, stopping to take more pictures and write notes on her clipboard. A teenager bought the lighthouse lamp, saying it would be perfect for his dorm room. "My mom hates it, but I think it's awesome," he said, carefully wrapping it in the newspaper Lisa had provided. "Your mom has good taste," Lisa laughed. But sometimes awesome and tasteful are 2 different things. By 11 o'clock, Lisa had made almost $200 and cleared out more than half her items. The steady flow of friendly neighbors and bargain hunters had turned what she'd expected to be a boring chore into an actually pleasant morning. But the woman with the clipboard was still there, now talking animatedly on her phone while gesturing toward Lisa's house. Lisa couldn't hear the conversation, but the woman's body language suggested she was upset about something. Lisa helped an elderly man load a small bookshelf into his truck. "Great sale," he said. "You've got everything organized real nice. Some people just throw stuff on tables without any thought." "Thanks," Lisa said. "I like things organized. You must be new to the neighborhood. I don't remember seeing you before." "I've been here about 2 years," Lisa replied. "I work a lot, so I'm not around much during the day." As the man drove away, Lisa noticed the woman with the clipboard was now walking directly toward her driveway. Her expression was stern, and she held the clipboard like a weapon. Whatever was about to happen, Lisa's instincts told her it wasn't going to be a friendly neighborhood chat about the weather. The peaceful Saturday morning garage sale was about to take an interesting turn. Patricia Blackwood had been the president of the Riverside Gardens Homeowners Association for 6 years, and she took the job more seriously than most people took their actual careers. Every morning she drove through the neighborhood in her spotless white Escalade, looking for violations of what she considered proper community standards. Patricia's own house was a monument to HOA compliance. The lawn was measured weekly to ensure it stayed between 2 and 3 inches high. Her mailbox was painted the approved shade of forest green, and her seasonal decorations were changed exactly on schedule according to the community guidelines she had helped write. This morning's patrol had started like any other. Patricia had her laminated copy of the HOA rules on the passenger seat, along with her digital camera, measuring tape, and violation notice forms. She'd already documented Mrs. Chen's slightly overgrown rose bushes and made a note about the Thompson family's trash cans being visible from the street. But when she turned onto Oakwood Street, Patricia saw something that made her blood pressure spike. A garage sale. Not just any garage sale, but what appeared to be a large commercial-style operation with multiple tables, signs, and cars parked all along the street. Patricia had very strong opinions about garage sales. In her mind, they attracted the wrong kind of people to the neighborhood. They created traffic noise, and worst of all, they made the community look cheap. She'd spent years trying to get garage sales banned entirely, but the city council had refused to change the ordinances. She drove past the house slowly, taking pictures with her phone. 4 tables, multiple signs, cars parked everywhere. This was exactly the kind of thing that would bring down property values and destroy the peaceful atmosphere she'd worked so hard to maintain. Patricia pulled into a parking spot across the street and began documenting everything. She opened her laptop and started typing an email to the City Code Enforcement Office. "Illegal commercial activity in residential zone," she wrote. "Multiple violations of community standards. Immediate intervention required." From her car, Patricia watched the steady stream of people coming and going from the garage sale. Families with children running around, teenagers playing music from their cars, An elderly man loading furniture into a truck that was clearly overweight for residential street parking. This was chaos. This was exactly what Patricia had spent her entire HOA presidency trying to prevent. She called her friend Janet, who lived 3 streets over, and shared Patricia's commitment to neighborhood standards. "You need to see what's happening on Oakwood Street," Patricia said. "Someone is running a full-scale commercial operation right out of their garage." "Are you serious?" Janet replied. "Did you call code enforcement?" "I'm documenting everything first. I want to make sure we have a solid case. This person clearly thinks they can do whatever they want, but they're about to learn that we have rules in this community." Patricia spent the next hour building her case. She counted the number of cars parked on the street. She timed how long each customer stayed. She photographed every sign and table, making notes about potential violations of city ordinances and HOA guidelines. At 10:30, Patricia decided it was time for a direct approach. She gathered her clipboard, camera, and a copy of the community regulations and walked across the street. The woman running the garage sale was helping a family with small children. She was friendly and patient, answering questions about various items and even letting the kids play with some toys before their parents decided whether to buy them. To Patricia, this casual attitude was part of the problem. Garage sales needed to be controlled, regulated, and limited. Patricia waited until the family left, then approached the woman with her clipboard ready. "Excuse me," she said in her most authoritative voice. "I'm Patricia Blackwood, president of the Riverside Gardens Homeowners Association. I need to speak with you about some violations." The woman looked up from organizing a box of books. She was younger than Patricia had expected, maybe mid-30s with short dark hair and an easy smile. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Lisa. Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's definitely a problem," Patricia replied, consulting her clipboard. "You're operating what appears to be a commercial business in a residential zone. You have multiple vehicles blocking access to the street. Your signs are posted beyond your property boundaries, and you're creating a noise disturbance." Lisa looked around, seeming genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some misunderstanding. This is just a garage sale. I have all the proper permits, and I checked the city ordinances before I started." Patricia felt her frustration growing. This was exactly the kind of response she got from people who thought rules didn't apply to them. "Having a permit doesn't mean you can ignore community standards," she said. "The HOA has additional regulations that supersede city permits. Could you show me which specific rules I'm violating?" Lisa asked. "I'd be happy to fix anything that's not in compliance." The calm, reasonable tone made Patricia even more annoyed. She was used to people becoming defensive or argumentative when confronted with violations. This woman's professional demeanor felt almost like she was being mocked. "The entire operation is excessive," Patricia explained. "Garage sales are supposed to be small family affairs. You've turned this into a retail business. Look at all these tables, all these items. This is clearly beyond the scope of a normal household sale." "These are all my personal belongings," Lisa said. "I've been collecting stuff for years and finally decided to clean out my house." "I find that hard to believe," Patricia shot back. "No one person accumulates this much merchandise unless they're running some kind of business." A young couple approached the tables and Lisa excused herself to help them. Patricia watched as Lisa answered questions about a coffee maker, explained that all electronics had been tested, and carefully wrapped a picture frame in newspaper. The interaction was friendly and professional, which in Patricia's mind only confirmed her suspicions about commercial activity. When the customers left, Patricia resumed her interrogation. "I'm going to need to see receipts proving you purchased all these items for personal use," she demanded. "And I want to verify that you actually live at this address." Lisa's expression changed slightly. For the first time, she looked less patient and more guarded. "I don't think I'm required to provide receipts for my personal belongings," she said. "And yes, I live here. I've been a resident for 2 years." 2 years? Patricia was surprised. She prided herself on knowing every resident in the community. "I don't recall approving your application for residency." "I wasn't aware I needed HOA approval to buy a house," Lisa replied. Patricia could feel the situation slipping away from her. This woman was clearly not intimidated by authority, which meant she was either extremely naive or she had some kind of leverage that Patricia didn't know about. In her experience, people who weren't afraid of the HOA usually had connections to city officials or lawyers. "Look," Patricia said, trying a different approach. I'm sure you're a nice person, but you need to understand that this community has standards. We work very hard to maintain property values and quality of life. Activities like this garage sale attract the wrong kind of attention and bring down the neighborhood. What kind of attention? Lisa asked. Strangers driving through looking for bargains. People who don't live here and don't care about our community standards. Traffic, noise, litter. It's a domino effect that starts with one person deciding rules don't apply to them. An elderly woman approached the book table, and once again Lisa politely excused herself to help a customer. Patricia watched as the two women discussed mystery novels and reading recommendations. The customer bought an armload of books and thanked Lisa for the reasonable prices. When they were alone again, Patricia played her trump card. I'm going to have to report this to the authorities, she announced. You've been given an opportunity to voluntarily comply with community standards and you've chosen to ignore that opportunity. Report what exactly? Lisa asked. Illegal commercial activity. Operating a business without proper licensing. Creating a public nuisance. Take your pick. Patricia pulled out her phone and started dialing. This was her favorite moment in any HOA enforcement action. Most people backed down immediately when they realized she was serious about involving the police. The threat of official intervention usually ended these conversations very quickly. But as Patricia waited for someone to answer her call, she noticed that Lisa didn't look worried or intimidated. Instead, she looked almost curious, like she was interested to see how this situation would play out. That should have been Patricia's first warning, that this garage sale confrontation wasn't going to end the way she expected. Officer Tony Vasquez was halfway through his morning patrol when the dispatch call came through. Disturbance at 1247 Oakwood Street. Caller reports illegal business operation and public nuisance, requesting immediate response. Tony had been working the East Side suburban beat for 8 years, and he knew exactly what this call meant. Weekend garage sale dispute, probably a neighbor complaint about parking or noise. These calls were routine, usually resolved with a brief conversation and maybe a suggestion to move some cars or lower the music volume. He pulled up to the address and immediately saw what looked like a perfectly normal garage sale scene. Several folding tables with household items, a few people browsing, cars parked along the street within legal boundaries, nothing that would typically qualify as a disturbance or illegal operation. The only person who appeared agitated was a blonde woman in white pants and a golf visor, standing near the garage with her phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking loudly enough that Tony could hear parts of her conversation from his patrol car. Yes, I'm still waiting for the police, she was saying. This has been going on for hours. The entire neighborhood is disrupted. I demand immediate action. Tony approached the scene with his standard professional demeanor. 8 years of suburban patrol had taught him that these neighbor disputes required careful handling. Usually both parties had legitimate concerns, and his job was to find a reasonable solution that satisfied city ordinances without escalating the situation. The woman with the phone spotted him immediately and rushed over. Officer, thank goodness you're here. I'm Patricia Blackwood, president of the Riverside Gardens HOA. This woman is operating an illegal business in violation of multiple city codes and community standards. Tony pulled out his notepad. Can you be more specific about which laws you believe are being violated? Patricia launched into what was clearly a prepared speech. Commercial activity in a residential zone. Excessive traffic causing safety hazards. Noise ordinances. Improper signage. Parking violations. The list goes on and on. Let me take a look around, Tony said. He walked toward the garage sale tables, noting that everything appeared to be properly organized and within normal parameters for a permitted sale. The woman running the garage sale was helping an elderly gentleman load a small lamp into his car. When she turned around, Tony was surprised to recognize a familiar face. Lisa Rodriguez worked Detective Division downtown. Tony had collaborated with her on several cases over the years, including a robbery investigation just 3 months ago. She was known throughout the department as one of the most thorough and professional detectives on the force. Tony and Lisa made eye contact, and he could see the slight amusement in her expression. She understood exactly how awkward this situation had become, but she gave him an almost imperceptible nod that said she wanted him to handle this by the book. Ma'am, Tony said to Lisa, I'm Officer Vasquez. I've received a complaint about this garage sale. Can you show me your permit? Lisa pointed to a laminated sheet taped to one of the tables. Right there. Permit number GS 2024-0847. Valid for today from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tony examined the permit. Everything was in order, properly filled out and officially stamped. He checked his watch. It was 11:15 a.m., well within the permitted hours. Can you walk me through what items you're selling? Tony asked, maintaining his professional tone despite knowing this was routine procedure. Personal household items, Lisa replied. Kitchen equipment, books, furniture, miscellaneous things I've accumulated over the years. Everything's priced to sell because I'm trying to clear out space. Tony surveyed the tables. Coffee makers, books, picture frames, electronics. All typical garage sale items, nothing that would suggest commercial resale operation. Patricia had been following the conversation closely, and she stepped forward with her clipboard. Officer, you need to understand that having a permit doesn't excuse the disruption this woman has caused. Look at all these cars parked on our street. Look at the traffic flow. This is supposed to be a quiet residential neighborhood. Tony counted the cars. 6 vehicles all legally parked on the public street with proper spacing from fire hydrants and driveways. No parking violations, no safety hazards, ma'am. Can you point out specific parking violations? Tony asked. It's not about violations, it's about impact, Patricia insisted. These people don't live here. They're strangers driving through our community, disrupting our peaceful Saturday morning. Garage sales are permitted activities, Tony explained. People are allowed to advertise and attract customers from outside the immediate neighborhood. Patricia's frustration was becoming more obvious. Are you telling me you're not going to do anything about this situation? I'm telling you that I haven't observed any violations of city ordinances, Tony replied. The sale appears to be properly permitted and operating within legal parameters. Then I want to speak to your supervisor, Patricia demanded. This is exactly the kind of lazy police work that allows our community standards to deteriorate. Tony had been called worse things during his career, but he remained professional. You're welcome to file a complaint through the proper channels. My badge number is 2847. Patricia pulled out her phone and started recording. I want this documented. Officer 2847 is refusing to enforce city codes. I'm recording this interaction as evidence of police negligence. Lisa watched the scene with growing interest. Her detective training had taught her to read people, and Patricia's escalating behavior suggested someone who was used to getting her way through intimidation tactics. Ma'am, Tony said to Patricia, you're welcome to record our interaction. Can you tell me exactly which city code you believe is being violated? Commercial activity in a residential zone, Patricia repeated. Do you have evidence that this is commercial activity rather than a personal garage sale? Tony asked, look at the scope of it. No one person has this much stuff unless they're running a business. Tony looked at the tables again. He'd seen much larger garage sales. Estate sales that took up entire front yards and required multiple families to manage. This was actually quite modest in comparison. The amount of items doesn't determine whether it's commercial or personal, Tony explained. What matters is whether the items being sold were purchased for resale purposes or are genuinely personal belongings. Patricia was becoming more agitated. Are you a lawyer? Are you qualified to make legal determinations about commercial activity? I'm qualified to enforce city ordinances, Tony replied. And I'm not seeing any violations here. A family with 2 children approached the garage sale and Lisa excused herself to help them. Tony watched as she patiently answered questions about board games and helped the kids choose items within their parents' budget. See, Patricia said. She's conducting business transactions. That's commercial activity. Selling personal items at a garage sale isn't commercial activity, Tony explained. It's specifically permitted under city ordinances. Patricia's recording session was getting more dramatic. This is unacceptable. I pay taxes in this community. I deserve police protection from people who think rules don't apply to them. Tony was starting to understand why Lisa had looked amused when he arrived. Patricia was exactly the type of person who made suburban police work challenging, someone who used official complaints as a weapon to control her neighbors. Ma'am, I've investigated your complaint thoroughly, Tony said. I don't see any violations that require police intervention. If you have concerns about HOA regulations, that's a civil matter between you and the homeowner. So you're refusing to shut down this illegal operation? Patricia demanded. I'm explaining that it's not illegal, Tony replied. Patricia's phone was still recording as she began making threats about reporting Tony to his supervisors, contacting city council members, and filing complaints with the mayor's office. Her voice was getting louder, and she was attracting attention from garage sale customers. Lisa finished helping the family and walked back over to where Tony and Patricia were standing. She'd been patient through the entire confrontation, but Tony could see that her professional instincts were kicking in. "Is there a problem here?" Lisa asked calmly. Patricia turned toward her with renewed anger. "Yes, there's a problem. This officer is refusing to do his job. He's protecting your illegal business operation instead of enforcing the law." Lisa looked at Tony with a slight smile. "Officer Vasquez, is there anything I can do to help resolve this situation?" Tony realized that the moment had come for Lisa to reveal her identity. The situation had escalated beyond a simple neighbor dispute, and Patricia's behavior was becoming increasingly problematic. "Actually," Lisa said, reaching into her back pocket, "there might be something I can clarify." Lisa Rodriguez pulled her detective badge from her back pocket and held it up for Patricia to see. "I'm Detective Rodriguez with Metro Police Department, Major Crimes Division. Badge number 4721. I'd like to understand exactly what laws you think I'm breaking at my own garage sale." The change in Patricia's expression was instant and dramatic. The color drained from her face, her mouth fell open, and for the first time since Tony had arrived, she was completely speechless. Officer Tony Vasquez had to suppress a smile. He'd worked with Lisa on enough cases to know she had a reputation for staying calm under pressure, but he'd never seen her use her detective credentials to handle a neighborhood dispute. This was definitely a first. "You're a police officer?" Patricia stammered, her phone still recording but now shaking in her hand. "Detective," Lisa corrected. "I've been with the department for 14 years. I specialize in homicide investigations, armed robbery, and organized crime. And today I'm trying to clean out my garage on my day off." Patricia looked back and forth between Lisa and Tony, clearly trying to process this unexpected development. But you're operating a business. Commercial activity? I documented everything." Lisa's voice remained calm and professional. "Ma'am, what you documented was a legal garage sale conducted by a homeowner selling personal belongings, which, as Officer Vasquez explained, is completely within city ordinances and HOA guidelines. HOA guidelines specifically prohibit excessive commercial activity," Patricia insisted, though her voice had lost much of its earlier authority. "Can you show me where the HOA agreement defines what constitutes excessive?" Lisa asked. "Because I read through the entire covenant when I bought this house 2 years ago. There's no specific restriction on garage sale size or duration, as long as city permits are obtained." Patricia fumbled with her clipboard, flipping through pages of printed regulations. It's about community standards, about maintaining the character of the neighborhood." "I understand your concern about community standards," Lisa said, "but making false reports to police about legal activities isn't the way to address those concerns." The word false hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia's recording session had captured her making specific accusations about illegal activity, and now she was learning that those accusations were directed at a police detective conducting a perfectly legal garage sale. Tony decided to step back into the conversation. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about your complaint. When you called this in, you reported illegal business activity. Were you aware that garage sales are specifically exempted from commercial activity restrictions?" Well, the scope of this sale seemed excessive," Patricia replied weakly. "Have you attended other garage sales in the area?" Tony asked. "I don't make a habit of encouraging these kinds of activities." Lisa exchanged a look with Tony. Patricia's answer revealed that she had no actual basis for comparison, no real understanding of what constituted a normal garage sale. "Ma'am," Lisa said, "I'm curious about something. You mentioned that you're the HOA president. How often do you file police reports about neighborhood issues?" Patricia's defensive posture returned. "I file reports when community standards are being violated. That's my responsibility as president." "How many police reports have you filed in the past year?" Lisa pressed. "I don't see how that's relevant." Tony had been taking notes throughout the conversation, and he looked up from his notepad. "Actually, it's very relevant. Filing false police reports is a misdemeanor offense. If there's a pattern of inappropriate use of police resources, that becomes a more serious issue." Patricia's eyes widened. "False reports? I observed actual violations. I have documentation. You observed a legal garage sale and reported it as illegal commercial activity, Lisa explained. You brought a police officer to my house to investigate activities that are specifically permitted under city law. That's the definition of a false report. I was protecting the community, Patricia insisted. From what? Lisa asked. From a detective selling her old coffee makers and books? A small crowd had gathered. Garage sale customers were pretending to browse while obviously listening to the conversation. Several neighbors had come out of their houses, drawn by the presence of a police car and the increasingly animated discussion. Patricia seemed to realize she was becoming the center of attention, and not in a good way. Her voice dropped to a more reasonable volume. Look, I didn't know you were a police officer. I was just trying to enforce community standards. Community standards should be based on actual rules, not personal preferences, Lisa replied, and they definitely shouldn't involve making false accusations to law enforcement. Tony closed his notepad. Ma'am, I'm going to issue a report on this incident. I'm recommending that you familiarize yourself with actual city ordinances before filing future complaints. Repeated false reports could result in charges. Patricia's phone was still recording, but now the footage was documenting her humiliation rather than what she'd hoped would be evidence of police negligence. Can I just go home now? You're free to leave any time, Tony said. But I'd suggest you consider whether there might be better ways to address community concerns in the future. As Patricia walked back toward her white SUV, Lisa called after her. Mrs. Blackwood, if you'd like a copy of the actual city ordinances regarding garage sales, I'd be happy to provide them. I keep current copies of all relevant laws for obvious professional reasons. Patricia didn't respond, but her pace quickened significantly. The small crowd of neighbors and customers had been listening to the entire exchange, and now several people approached Lisa with amused expressions. You're really a detective? Asked the elderly man who had bought the lamp earlier. 14 years, Lisa confirmed. That explains why you stayed so calm, said a woman who had been browsing the book table. I would have lost my temper after the first 5 minutes of that nonsense. Tony finished writing his report and walked over to Lisa. Well, that was interesting. I've never had a complainant accuse a detective of running an illegal garage sale. Patricia seems to have very strong opinions about community standards, Lisa observed. Any idea why she targeted your sale specifically? Tony asked. Lisa gestured toward her neatly organized tables. Honestly, I think she was looking for something to complain about, and a garage sale was an easy target. She probably figured I'd be intimidated by her HOA authority and shut down immediately. Wrong person to try intimidating, Tony laughed. A family with teenagers approached the electronics table, and Lisa went to help them while Tony finished his paperwork. The normal garage sale atmosphere was quickly returning, but now with an added element of neighborhood celebrity. Detective Rodriguez? Called a voice from the street. Lisa looked up to see a man in his 50s walking toward her tables. I'm Jim Chen. I live 3 houses down. I just wanted to thank you for how you handled that situation. Patricia has been making life miserable for half the neighborhood with her complaints and threats. What kind of complaints? Lisa asked, her detective instincts activating. Everything. She fined the Johnsons for having their garbage cans visible from the street on non-pickup days. She's been harassing Mrs. Peterson about her garden being non-compliant with HOA standards. Last month, she threatened the teenager next door with legal action for parking his car in his own driveway, because she claimed it was aesthetically inappropriate. Lisa exchanged a look with Tony, who was still within hearing distance. Has anyone filed complaints about her behavior? People are scared, Jim explained. She threatens everyone with fines, legal action, even police reports. Most folks just comply rather than fight it. Well, Lisa said, people should know that making false reports to police is illegal, and HOA presidents can't just make up rules. As Jim walked away with a small kitchen appliance, Tony approached Lisa's table one more time. Sounds like Mrs. Blackwood might have some explaining to do about her enforcement tactics. Sounds like the neighborhood might need someone to explain their actual rights under HOA agreements, Lisa replied. Tony got back in his patrol car, but before driving away, he rolled down his window. Lisa, you might want to consider running for HOA president yourself. Sounds like this community could use some actual law enforcement experience in that position. Lisa laughed as she helped another customer. but Tony's suggestion was starting to sound like it might not be such a bad idea after all. Word spread through the Riverside Gardens neighborhood faster than a summer wildfire. By Sunday morning, everyone had heard about the HOA president who called the police on a detective's garage sale. The story became legendary in local coffee shops, neighborhood social media groups, and backyard conversations. Lisa Rodriguez finished her garage sale that Saturday afternoon with a smile on her face and nearly $300 in her pocket. More importantly, she'd learned something interesting about her community that her detective instincts told her was worth investigating further. Monday morning brought the first phone call. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman with the allegedly non-compliant garden, wanted to know if Lisa could help her understand her rights under the HOA agreement. Patricia fined me $200 for having roses that were supposedly the wrong color, Mrs. Peterson explained. She said pink roses violated the community color scheme guidelines, but when I asked to see those guidelines in writing, she just said I needed to trust her expertise. Lisa invited Mrs. Peterson over for coffee and spent an hour going through the actual HOA covenant documents. There was no mention of color restrictions for flowers anywhere in the official agreements. Tuesday brought Jim Chen and 3 other neighbors, all carrying violation notices from Patricia. Together, they discovered that none of the violations were based on actual written rules. Patricia had been enforcing her personal preferences as if they were legal requirements. She told me I couldn't park my motorcycle in my own driveway, said Dave Miller, a young father who lived on the corner, said it was inconsistent with community aesthetic standards. But there's nothing in the HOA rules about vehicle types. Lisa's detective training kicked into high gear. She started documenting Patricia's enforcement patterns, collecting violation notices, and researching the legal boundaries of HOA authority. What she found was troubling. Over the past 3 years, Patricia had collected nearly $15,000 in fines from residents. The money was supposed to go into a community improvement fund, but Lisa couldn't find any evidence of how those funds had been spent. By Wednesday, Lisa had enough information to make some phone calls. She contacted the city's HOA oversight office and discovered that several of Patricia's enforcement actions violated state laws governing homeowner associations. Thursday brought the breakthrough. Mrs. Anderson, an elderly widow who lived alone, came to Lisa in tears. Patricia had threatened her with legal action over her late husband's woodworking shop in their garage. She said, "I'm running an illegal business because I have power tools," Mrs. Anderson sobbed. "But Harold just liked making birdhouses. I haven't touched those tools since he passed 2 years ago." Lisa spent the evening in Mrs. Anderson's garage, looking at a touching collection of handmade birdhouses and woodworking projects. Nothing commercial, just the hobby of a man who'd enjoyed working with his hands. Patricia had threatened a grieving widow over her deceased husband's woodworking tools. That's when Lisa decided it was time to take action. Friday afternoon, Lisa knocked on Patricia's front door. When Patricia answered, clearly surprised to see her, Lisa held up a folder thick with documents. "We need to talk," Lisa said. They sat in Patricia's perfectly appointed living room, surrounded by HOA compliance awards and community service certificates. Lisa spread the documents across the coffee table. "I've been reviewing your enforcement activities over the past 3 years," Lisa began. "I found some concerning patterns." Patricia's face went pale as Lisa explained what she'd discovered. Fines based on non-existent rules, threats that exceeded HOA authority, financial irregularities in the community fund accounts. "I was protecting property values," Patricia said weakly. "You were bullying your neighbors," Lisa replied. "And in some cases you were breaking the law." Lisa opened her folder and pulled out copies of violation notices. Fining someone for pink roses when there's no color restriction in the HOA covenant. That's fraud. Threatening legal action for activities that are specifically permitted, that's intimidation. And I'm very curious about where that $15,000 in collected fines actually went. Patricia's hands were shaking. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that your position as HOA president doesn't give you the authority to make up rules or threaten people with fake violations," Lisa said. "And I want you to return the money you collected for non-existent violations." Over the next hour, Lisa walked Patricia through the actual legal boundaries of HOA authority. She explained the difference between legitimate community standards and personal preferences. Most importantly, she made it clear that continuing to abuse her position would result in criminal charges. "The neighbors are scared of you," Lisa said. "Elderly people are paying hundreds of dollars in fines rather than fight your made-up rules. That's going to stop." Patricia agreed to resign from the HOA presidency and return the inappropriately collected fines. More importantly, she agreed to send written apologies to every resident she'd inappropriately targeted. Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the garage sale incident, Lisa received a text message from Jim Chen. "Emergency HOA meeting called for tomorrow. Patricia resigned. Neighbors want to elect new leadership. Interested in running for president?" Sunday's HOA meeting was the most well-attended in community history. Patricia's resignation letter was read aloud, along with her admission that several enforcement actions had exceeded proper authority. The $15,000 in inappropriate fines would be returned to residents with interest. When nominations opened for new HOA president, 5 different neighbors nominated Lisa. Her acceptance speech was simple and direct. "I'm not interested in being the HOA police," she said. "I'm interested in making sure our community operates according to actual rules, not personal preferences. I'm interested in neighbor helping neighbor, not neighbor threatening neighbor." Lisa won the election unanimously. Her first official act was organizing a community barbecue in the neighborhood park. Her second act was establishing a voluntary mediation process for neighbor disputes, avoiding the need for fines or threats. By summer's end, the Riverside Gardens neighborhood had transformed from a community ruled by fear into a genuine neighborhood where people looked out for each other. Property values actually increased, not because of strict enforcement, but because people wanted to live in a place where neighbors were friends instead of adversaries. Lisa kept her detective job, but she found that her HOA experience had made her a better investigator. Understanding how people abuse authority in small ways helped her recognize larger patterns of abuse in her criminal cases. And every spring, Lisa organized a community-wide garage sale weekend, where neighbors could sell their belongings without fear of harassment or made-up violations. Patricia moved to a different neighborhood 6 months later, but not before she'd learned an important lesson about the difference between leadership and bullying. The garage sale that started as a simple weekend cleaning project had revealed something important about power, community, and the responsibility that comes with authority. Sometimes the most important investigations happen right in your own neighborhood, and sometimes the best way to fight injustice is simply to stand up and say no more. Lisa's badge gave her the authority to investigate crimes, but her neighbors gave her the authority to make their community a better place to live. And in the end, that second authority turned out to be just as important as the first.